Hello, friends, and welcome back to r/ProRevenge. Our first story about the importance of being a good employee to others, otherwise you could get in trouble. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here, and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Don't be a D to people you work with. So about 2 years ago, I worked for a tech company in tech support. Most of the people are pretty cool, but the guy I work closest with, let's call him P, is a total a-hole. The kind of guy who you'll look in the eye when you're asking him for help and then just look back at his screen like you don't even exist. Me and P never really got on from the get-go. He'd been with the company a long time, 15 years plus, and I came along and he resented me from the start. He's good buddies and neighbors with our manager, so I could never really say much in my own defense in the early days. I think it was also down to the fact that I didn't have any real experience at the time, and he just wasn't the kind of person that was used to having to help people. Either way, he treated me like crap all day, every day. Anyway, fast forward 18 months into the job, and it's March 2017. In March every year, there's a big horse racing event in a town near where I work, and P, being a big gambler and actually working a second job at the race course, wants to take some time off, the same 3 days as he does every year, to go to this event. He usually does this only a month or so in advance. Couldn't tell you why. Right around the time I knew he would be wanting to book this time off, P decides to take his craphousery up a notch and calls me out in front of the whole team for texting my girlfriend when I'm at work. The day before, he spent almost 2 hours watching horse racing on his phone. Needless to say, I told him to go F himself and called him out on his crap. Later that day, I checked the holiday schedule and realized he hadn't actually booked off his annual horse race event. You can bet your butt I took the opportunity to take those days for myself, and as we weren't both allowed to be able to take leave at the same time, he had to work those days while I sat around my house for 3 days eating, drinking, and playing video games. I made sure everyone knew that's why I did it too. I'd start looking for a new job. P and his manager buddy are both out for your blood now, especially if you told everyone what the situation is. Can't have you making them look bad. And our second story. High-tech revenge. There was this girl who used to be a bartender at my favorite local pub. I'll call her Nikki. I went there a lot and we gradually became friends. Apparently she wanted to date me at one time, but I was too oblivious to get the hints, but that's a whole different story. She had this guy who she was on and off with, I'll call him Tim, who was like 15 years older than her. She was 27 at the time. He was a total D-head. He would do normal D-head stuff like borrow money from her and never repay, call her fat, she was a solid 10 out of 10, get mad when she hung out with other guys, etc. She stopped coming into work for a while, and one of the other bartenders told me she had hurt her foot or something, so I decided to give her a call. Turns out she was in the hospital, so I went to visit her and brought her a pizza from this place next to the pub that we used to go to. On the phone, she told me she'd stepped on a piece of glass, but I knew from the moment I saw her foot that this was a lie. It was a total mess, stitches everywhere. We talked for a while, and I cheered her up a bit. Good pizza makes everything better. I asked her to tell me what really happened, and she started crying and confessed that he had hit her in the past and threatened to do more if she tried to leave him. Not okay. Now, I should give you some background on myself at this point. I'm big, 6'7", 270 pounds, but in no way a tough guy. I've worked in programming and IT since I was in high school and was working as an information security analyst for a nationwide ISP at the time. I dabbled in some harmless hacking in the past, but nothing targeted or malicious. Well, now I had a target, and holy F was I feeling malicious. I knew where Tim lived, having dropped Nikki off there a couple times, and I knew his Wi-Fi used WEP encryption because I'd helped her fix a problem with her laptop once. WPA and WPA2, now completely standard, are fairly secure. WEP I can crack my way into in a matter of minutes. Google air cracking if you want to learn how. I parked near his apartment complex and used a Yagi antenna to connect to his network. Now, I won't go too far into the details of what I did, but it amounts to a type of man-in-the-middle attack where port 443 traffic is dropped, forcing websites to use HTTP rather than HTTPS. This isn't possible these days, but back then it wasn't that uncommon. Next, I used a program called Wireshark to capture packets and filter them for HTTP login cookies. I then used a Grease Monkey script called Cookie Injector, available on GitHub, to insert the cookies into a Firefox browser session on my laptop. This resulted in me being logged into his Facebook, Hotmail, and online poker accounts from my laptop. I then used a DAuth packet attack to deny him access to his own router. I didn't want any interruptions. Using my phone as a 3G modem, I changed the password to his Facebook and account. I then made a post with a picture of Nikki's messed up foot and the message, "This is what happens when I get angry." I tagged his mother, sister, boss, and a bunch of his friends from the pub and coworkers. Now comes the part where I may have crossed the line. I had a really sweet DSLR camera at the time, telephoto lens, great low light sensitivity, etc. I'd used it to take a picture of him through his window while he was sitting at his desk playing online poker before beginning my attack. This is also how I knew he'd be online. I used GIMP to add a crosshair to the photo and centered it on his head. I then emailed it to him from himself with the text, "Mess with the best, die like the rest. The next time you hurt her, I'll make you beg me to kill you." It sounded a lot less cringy at the time. Now, to me, this had been meant to scare him a little, maybe get him in trouble with people he cared about, nothing more. I found out a few weeks later that he had been fired and his whole family wasn't talking to him. Nikki said he changed his number and wouldn't talk to her. A week or so later, I heard that he left town and nobody knew where he'd gone. I know what I did was probably a little too extreme, but I gotta say, I'm not the least bit sorry. GD. Now this is ProRevenge. I hope he lay awake for months terrified that somebody would try to get him. And his family was totally right to cut him out. Who the hell would want to associate with that? And our last story. Harass my GF and fire me for having proof. Okay. So about 3 years ago, my soon-to-be wife and I were working for an editing company that edited articles for major magazine brands. So my girlfriend is attractive, and some people, in particular our boss, wouldn't stop harassing her about it. I confronted him about it, and he said, "It's all in good fun, take a joke," and sent me out of his office. My girlfriend told me it was okay because we were making goodish money. So the next day, he cuts my girlfriend's work in half and gives it to me. While I'm sitting there typing away and trying to get 20 articles edited and submitted, he's over there hitting on my girlfriend, telling her, "How about we meet after work and talk about a raise you're eligible for?" We all know what he was hinting at. She politely declined. The next couple weeks were about the same, but he started getting her flowers and talking about he needs someone to share his time with. Then he started texting her, trying to flirt with her. I printed out the screenshots and took them to him and confronted him about it, and he says that it wasn't him and kicks me out of his office. 2 hours later, my girlfriend gets an email about how she's getting a raise from $19 an hour to $25 an hour. Then I get one saying, "We regret to inform you, but due to your lack of workflow, you're going to be terminated immediately, and your holiday bonus is forfeited due to the termination." I am PO'd. So I was looking for ways to get back at him. I tried to take him to court, but my case was not compelling enough to take him to court. So I started doing some research and found out where he lived. Then I went past his house a couple times and found out that he parked it on the outside of his house 30 feet away from a fire line. I told my girlfriend my evil plan. She didn't want me doing it because it was technically Grand Theft Auto, but I had a plan and I was going to wait for the time when he went out of town for a couple of months. And the country I live in has a policy: if a car is impounded for any reason, if payment and pickup isn't within 60 days, they sell the car for the money you owe them and the cost of a new title. So my girlfriend got buddy-buddy with him and found out he was going to Seattle for a 77-day business trip. Kaboom. There's my opportunity. I rented a U-Haul truck and waited until 3:30 a.m. the day after he left, dressed in all black and put on a Hillary mask. I also spent $90 on the little tracks you put your wheels on so you can push it around, and I bought 4 of them, jacked his Ferrari up, put the tracks under his wheels, and pushed it 36 feet to the fire line and waited. I returned the truck and the tracks, drove by the next day and found a pink ticket on his windshield. That same day, I went to the local impound office and asked about the cars they had backed up, and I looked at some beat-up cars and went back a couple times just so I wasn't suspicious. I wait 58 days, and I went back, and effing boom. There it was. They said that it was past the deadline, but since the car's priced over $200,000, they have to wait 15 more days. I got busy and got there 16 days later, and it was still there, So I did some paperwork and had to do some insurance paperwork, and they said my total was $800 for the impound fee, and I get to have a salvage title since I got it from an automotive yard. I went to get the title, and the total on that was $2,100, so I paid that in cash and took the paperwork back. They gave me a spare key that they'd gotten from Ferrari. And boom, my revenge was served. I took it home and waited. 3 days later, my wife told me he tried to sue his valet for doing all this. Nothing came of it. She quit the next day, and we both got jobs at a better editing company. I kept the car in my garage and treated it like my baby. After about 8 months, I sold it because we wanted to buy a house and pay off some college debt. I hate it when bosses think they're above everyone like this. It really grinds my gears. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.